you were obviously in D.C. to cast those votes, as you said, and on Saturday, hadn't slept, came in to the last stump event. Do you feel in the days that you have been able to be on the trail that you've really been able to get your message out to voters that you're asking to support you today?
I do. I've worked really hard the past few days. Like you pointed out, I hadn't slept at all. It was that important to me to get here, to get to speak to the voters, to get to earn their vote, because I know it's not a right or a privilege. I want to get out, and over the next 2 weeks during the runoff, my intent is to get out and work really hard to earn those votes.
Is there anything you would have done differently about how the last couple of weeks have unfolded in terms of that campaign versus role of being a senator?
I don't think I could have done anything any differently. It was my priority to be in Washington as your representative, working hard, and I got back here just as soon as I possibly could.
The Washington Post has uncovered what's described as an elaborate ruse by the Secret Service to whisk the president out of Turkey last month, fearing an assassination attempt by Iran. President Trump offered just a brief wave as he boarded Air Force One to leave the NATO summit in Turkey last month. But according to the Washington Post, unbeknownst to almost everyone, the plane then took off without him because of concerns over a possible assassination plot by Iran. How did the Secret Service pull that off? Rewind the tape. According to the Post, after the president boarded, an airport catering truck, something like this, secretly took him to another military plane. A short time later, after switching to the newer presidential aircraft in the UK, the president was asked about what appeared to be other security precautions.
Were you aware of any credible threat by Iran against your
Well, I have a threat all the time. I'm number one on their list before you. But if I go, you go.
But it turns out the press pool had actually been flying without him for a time. When asked about the switch yesterday, the White House said, "There are many enemies of America who have their sights set on him, and we use every tool at our disposal to address those threats." And that report came out just after the president was asked about Iran's demand for war reparations.
They asked for money for the damage that we've done. I said, that's a good idea. Well, we're going to ask for money for the damage they've done over a 50-year period.
The president cited attacks on U.S. service members over the years, as well as the deaths of Iranian protesters. In Washington, Doug Luzader, Fox News.
In his latest interview on Iranian state TV, Iran's president revealed he recently met with the country's hidden supreme leader for 7 hours and says they discussed Iran's economic situation, a sign U.S. sanctions are top of mind for Tehran.
All of the enemy's plans are aimed at creating division. What we have to do is prevent divisions from emerging.
After backing off massive missile strikes for now, President Trump is once again eyeing economic pressure to finish the job.
This is about them literally running out of money. They can't pay their soldiers. They can't pay their besieged, their security forces. That's when things start to fall apart.
You know, Iran is broke, totally broke.
And President Trump wants to make Iran even more so by demanding reparations for all the damage they've caused after Iran demanded its own compensation.
They asked for money for the damage that we've done. I said, that's a good idea. Well, we're going to ask for money for the damage they've done over a 50-year period.
Despite all the money talk, though, some military leaders say the regime will only respond to one thing.
Eventually, President Trump will combine military force and what Secretary Bessent is doing. And at that point, when we do that, we will bend Iran to our will.
Many Middle East experts also believe the regime plans to use the upcoming midterms as leverage to force the U.S. out of an unpopular war without a nuclear deal. In Washington, Rebecca Castor, Fox News.
We are chasing the virus. The virus is ahead of us.
More than 2,000 deaths and counting in this Ebola outbreak centered on the Democratic Republic of Congo. It's now the fastest growing on record. It took 9 weeks to get to 1,000 deaths, but less than a month for that number to double, underscoring the difficulty of containing the virus.
We need to raise awareness. We need to explain more to our fellow citizens because a population that understands the disease will itself report cases.
There are now more than 4,000 confirmed cases. Frontline healthcare workers and first responders say help is still not coming quickly enough, despite billions pledged by the international community, though one problem appears to have been solved: Hundreds of doctors and nurses are now back on the job after going months without being paid.
We will not hear again about strike of health workers. While salaries will be paid,
the CDC has now added new restrictions on travel from the region, telling Americans who have been in the Democratic Republic of Congo to wait 21 days before heading home. Meanwhile, some doctors in the U.S. are now calling for resources to ramp up, saying it's time for an information-based approach to stopping the spread.
The way we're looking at Ebola, we're still looking at viruses through the lens of symptoms. It's the 21st century.
The World Health Organization is now starting a clinical trial on a vaccine that could be effective in fighting the Ebola outbreak. In London, Greg Palcon, Fox News.
Staff Sergeant Alexis Jaramillo has spent 11 years serving this country. The Puerto Rican-born Army aviation specialist is proud of that service, but right now, he says the country isn't standing behind his family.
I don't feel good. I feel betrayed, just because the way this has been treated. And this is the last picture of the that we took together before she was detained.
He's talking about his wife, Maisa Lopez Eliezer. She came to the U.S. from Sao Paulo, Brazil on a visa in 2019. The couple married, and they did what they were supposed to do. They filed paperwork to change her immigration status. On July 8th, the family drove 8 hours to Montgomery, Alabama, where Jaramillo was previously stationed for what they believed was a routine immigration interview.
We were really happy the day before because we knew that we were doing the correct way, and then everything is going to be 100% sure that we're going to get a good outcome from there.
But during the interview, an immigration officer separated Eliezer from her husband and their 5-year-old son, Noah.
That's when they gave him the bad news in front of my child. They said, your wife is being detained. Obviously, I don't want to recall back that moment because it put me into a lot of, wow, it is really hard.
I spoke to immigration attorney Michael Gehagen. While he is not involved in this case, he has practiced immigration law for nearly 20 years and says situations like this are more common than people think.
So she came in on a visa, she applied for asylum, and then she married this guy while her asylum application was pending. So they sent her a biometrics appointment notice saying, hey, come to this office to have your fingerprints taken, and she didn't show. So at that point, they can actually deny your asylum application, then issue an administrative arrest warrant. So whenever she shows up for the marriage interview, they got her.
Jaramillo confirms his wife missed that biometrics appointment, saying they believe their marriage paperwork had replaced it.
We never did that appointment because we already submitted all the paperwork for our marriage.
But Gehagen says one filing does not cancel the other, and missing the appointment set off a chain of legal consequences, including a removal order issued by a judge.
Once that motion to reopen is filed, just filed, it stops the deportation right there. At this point, it's a race against the clock. ICE, who is contacting her home country consulate, trying to get what they call travel papers or travel documents to allow them to deport her. There is not going to be any more hearings. The judge has already issued a deportation order. It's up to the husband to hire a lawyer to file the motion to reopen.
The family has hired an attorney, and they are appealing, but the fight is taking a toll, financially and personally.
Just started feeling more overwhelmed because of all this is costing me a lot of money, and my financial situation right now, it is not good.
Eliezer is currently held at the ICE Processing Center in Basile in Evangeline Parish.
She's not doing good. She's really depressed. She's really stressed.
Jaramillo says the hardest part is watching his son try to understand why his mother isn't home, especially as he starts a new school year.
My main concern is his mental stability. And then I was looking forward to mom be here so she can go buy stuff for him, take him for first day at school, because this is going to be the first time she leaves this and he's living this.
So what would happen to your family if your wife were to be deported?
Thank you for that question, because that is my nightmare right now. Now what's going to happen with the Army? And it is a lot into it, and that is, for me, thinking about that is a nightmare.
What would you have to say to critics who are always like, no one is above the law?
We are not breaking here the law. We're trying to comply with the law. That's the only thing I need to say.
Jaramillo says his wife is a loving mother, and he is not giving up. He's calling on lawmakers to step in.
Every single one, representatives, senators, everyone has that power. Please help me out here. And I for sure, I will continue, obviously, my commitment to this country, which is I have left like 10 more years.
For this family, the clock is ticking. A motion to reopen could stop the deportation, but it has to be filed before ICE puts her on a plane.
Small business owners are feeling more upbeat. The National Federation of Independent Business says its optimism index rose last month to a reading of 99.8. That's the highest level since last August. And while uncertainty is still running high, more owners say they plan to ramp up hiring. Intel is boosting its stock sale, now planning to raise $20 billion by selling more shares to help fund its chip manufacturing business. That's up from an original target of $15 billion. Intel has been pouring money into new facilities as it takes on other competitors. A chicken surplus is easing Americans' grocery bills. Poultry companies are producing more chicken than consumers are buying. It's driving chicken prices down to lows and squeezing company profits. But for grocery shoppers and restaurants, it's setting up potential relief from inflation. And Domino's is rolling out a new pizza, size for one. The rectangular pie launches later this month called the Domino. The company says it's going after diners who want a solo meal. The move comes as sales growth slows across U.S. pizza chains, pushing brands to roll out new menu items to drive business. CJ Papa, Fox News.
Many young adults are delaying major life milestones because of concerns about the cost.
A lot of times it's just a lack of priorities or lack of clarity within their plans.
Cole Carruthers is a wealth management advisor at Northwestern Mutual. They recently conducted a survey and found 56% of millennials and 72% of Gen Z adults are delaying at least one significant life milestone because of financial challenges. The biggest concern for both groups, buying a home.
Houses are more expensive than they used to be.
The median price for a single-family home in the U.S. is just under $435,000, according to the National Association of Realtors, and those prices just continue to go up.
Most people still assume they need 20% down on a home. I think the reality is there's a lot of different options there.
The other life event young adults are delaying, having kids. Financial site LendingTree estimates the cost to raise a child from birth to 18 years old is over $300,000. That breaks down to about $17,000 a year.
Again, the anxiety is not going to go away overnight, but I think when we get real clear about our goals and our priorities, I think it becomes that much easier to get there.
Carruthers recommends setting financial goals. Figure out what's most important and meet with a financial advisor about how you can reach those goals. He says we're supposed to have annual checkups for our health, and we should schedule annual checkups for our finances as well. For Consumer Watch, I'm Jen Sullivan.
Stacey Norton's mother was in her early 30s when she died of colon cancer. At age 25, her sister passed away from a brain cancer, and her maternal grandmother had both colon and uterine cancer.
So there's a huge family history, huge.
Norton is also at extremely high risk of developing cancer through genetic testing. This OBGYN at Houston Methodist learned she has Lynch syndrome, an inherited mutation in one of 5 specific DNA repair genes that is estimated to affect about 1 in every 279 people in the U.S. But experts say many people don't know they have it because awareness is low.
At 47, I actually had a what I thought at the time was going to be a risk reductive hysterectomy, in time to find out I already had stage 1 uterine cancer.
That's why Norton has twice now rolled up her sleeve for a vaccine being tested in early clinical trials. Researchers hope the vaccine will teach the immune system to attack abnormal clumps of cells before they turn into cancer.
July 31st of 2024, I had a colonoscopy, and that's the first time ever I've had a colonoscopy with no polyps, which was huge for me.
Norton now hopes she has a future without another cancer diagnosis and that her children will be spared from the disease. They too have the same syndrome.
If we don't do these things, then we won't ever move medicine forward and make it better for everybody.
For Health Minute, I'm Mandy Gaither.
It's New York. Everyone's on the take all the time.
Adam Driver and Miles Teller take on the mob. The pair play brothers in Paper Tiger and find themselves entangled with the Russian mafia in 1980s New York. Scarlett Johansson also stars in the drama, which arrives November 13th. Sharon Stone has been selected for the Creative Coalition's Humanitarian Awards. The event celebrates entertainers who have made an impact through leadership, community, and important causes. The actress was chosen for her work as Global Campaign Chair of AMFAR. John Stamos will also be honored for serving as a Child Help Ambassador. The event takes place September 10th in Los Angeles.
I'm the lead reporter on this story.
Fred, you are the story.
John Hamm hits the airwaves in American Hostage. The actor portrays a radio reporter who gets pulled into a hostage situation when the perpetrator demands to be interviewed live. The anthology thriller series premieres September 20th on MGM+. In Hollywood, I'm Rick Damigella.
You are live.
Hey, the light's on. I can see you. Hello out there. Hello.
Baz Luhrmann's epic Elvis Presley in Concert features restored footage that had been forgotten for decades in a Kansas salt mine.
When I started to see what we had, I was a bit like, oh my God. And it was also, it smelled of vinegar, so it meant that it was actually rotting, you know, it was like falling apart.
Camera crew, gentlemen. All right.
Then suddenly we found this 40-minute tape of Elvis just speaking about his life. And that was the light bulb moment. Because most works on Elvis are other people talking about him.
There's been a lot written and a lot said, but never from my side of the story.
Luhrmann says making the film taught him a lot about the king.
I think he was always trying to disarm people about him because he was so striking and such an icon, you know? That was really the big revelation, his humor and his humanity.
It's gotta be like the first time we go on.
In Hollywood, I'm David Daniel.
I've removed a snake out of a car vent, in the engine, purses, backpacks. In a helmet, never.
It's an opponent that probably won't end up on this season's football schedule.
It's kind of unbelievable.
But it's a matchup the Maumelle High School football team had to face anyway. While at practice Thursday, one player noticed a snake in his helmet, quickly turning that practice into a real deal situation.
When the officers got there and stuff, they examined the helmet, and at that time they could see that there was a snake in the helmet. They verified it was not a copperhead, but it possibly was a cottonmouth or a water snake.
Chris Davis with Maumelle Animal Services says they responded to the high school after a report of a copperhead in a football helmet. Instead, it was actually a cottonmouth, a venomous snake known to hide out in dark, sheltered places.
The cottonmouth, in my opinion, is probably the second most venomous snake here in Arkansas. I would say the rattlesnake is probably the number one. If this snake would have bit the child, it probably would have been very fatal.
The snake was snuggled in between padding of the helmet. This made it hard to remove. Davis says they had to flood the snake out in order to grab it, bringing home a win for the Hornets.
It was very unreal. So you had to kind of be there and take pictures to say this was real.
Intense video from a highway in New York captured the moment a tractor-trailer slammed into an overpass, overturning the large vehicle. The video, caught on dash cam, shows the semi-truck strike the overpass, shearing the top of its trailer and forcing the vehicle into a roll. According to the New York State Police, the truck then struck a car parked on the shoulder. Thankfully, no one was seriously injured in the incident, and all lanes that were blocked by the crash have since reopened. But troopers say the truck driver was ticketed for a, quote, overheight vehicle. One of the last things you'd likely want to see out the window of a plane was caught on camera after a reported bird strike caused flames to shoot from an engine of an American Airlines flight. In a mayday call from the plane, which took off from Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, the pilots reported striking birds shortly after takeoff and said they were having engine problems. Video captured by a passenger showed flames shooting from beneath the wing for several minutes. American Airlines said the plane returned safely to Myrtle Beach and was removed from service for maintenance. Finally, from a bird strike to a lightning strike on a water tower. That's what was captured on the body cam of a police officer in Bradenton, Florida, who had a front row seat for the shocking moment. The department said thanks to its lightning protection equipment, the tower took the strike like a champ. They later shared the video and some sage advice. When thunder roars, go indoors. For Take a Look at This, I'm Jeremy Roth.
70 years after being stolen, this kneecap, has been returned to its rightful place. For this historical heist, we got to go back to 1956, when a young George Box is on a school trip to Glastonbury Abbey, the medieval monastery in England. According to a release from the Abbey, then 11-year-old George picked up the kneecap and a piece of ancient floor tile from an archaeological dig site on the grounds, pocketed the items, and took them home. George would later move to Australia in the 1970s, where he kept the ill-gotten goods on display in a glass cabinet, and they stayed there for 50 years. About a year ago, George passed away. Before dying, his wife agreed to return the artifacts to the Abbey, but they agreed only after his death, and that's exactly what happened. On the anniversary of his passing, the kneecap and tile were returned in a handmade box to the Abbey Museum to be placed on display. To whom the bone belongs, we may never know. The Abbey says 3 abbots who died in the 13th century were buried in the section that was being worked on during George's school trip, and they remain in their tombs to this day. So which of the 3 had their kneecap nicked? That's going to remain a mystery.
Kenya's lion populations, which number about 2,500 to 2,600, face the major threat facing their conservation and their future well-being is habitat loss and fragmentation. Human-wildlife conflict is major. Some lions are also killed, poached, but that's not so big here in Kenya. So the major threat is loss of habitat and therefore loss of prey, but also conflicts with people is major.
Probably it's with the increase in the population of people, the increase in livestock in those areas has led drastically to lions and other predators starting to prey on livestock. And one of the ways to have that finish is to put down a poison called Furdodan, which originally was actually part of a pesticide.
When conflicts occur, people might the lions might come in contact with the livestock, eat them, and people retaliate. And one of the key threats here in Kenya to lions is really retaliation. People killing lions because they ate their livestock.
This month is not just about remembrance, it's about resilience. It is about honoring a community that has always been here, that has always shaped our culture, our politics, and our history, even when society tried to erase them.
In Sacramento, Assemblymember Matt Haney from San Francisco honored California's 4th annual Transgender History Month, standing with trans activists.
It is not enough for trans people to be seen. We deserve to be employed, promoted, protected, respected, and empowered to lead.
The current climate has been fraught with controversy as issues of transgender athletes hit national headlines. Access to bathrooms and gendered health care also have become politically divisive.
I think trans people are in crisis right now across the country, not just across the country, across the globe.
For some, San Francisco has been a place of refuge from the battleground. San Francisco created a trans district in 2017 in the city's Tenderloin neighborhood.
This feels like a real home. I mean, it's such an incredible neighborhood. People really know each other and recognize people and kind of show up for each other, especially in kind of more difficult moments.
Trans rights activists say it's important to remember the history and the struggles of generations before. On the corner of Taylor and Turk, 2 plaques remind passersby about the violent conflict at Compton's cafeteria in 1966, as trans and gay people rose up long before the Stonewall riot.
That riot, one of the very first LGBTQ civil rights uprisings in the United States, is now recognized nationally as a turning point.
The San Francisco Public Library has created a new exhibit about the Compton's cafeteria corner to honor local trans history. And the community says the need to educate and advocate for trans rights and history continues.
The trans community has not always been
included in the larger Pride activities, and so it's really important to recognize the history, the story, the contributions.
As part of the Trans Month celebrations, the Public Library is holding an event later in the month, one of many efforts to try and educate the people about the trans community. Reporting from the Trans District in San Francisco, Jana Katsuyama, KTVU, Fox 2 News.
August 11th, 1965. In Los Angeles, 6 days of deadly rioting and looting erupt in the predominantly black section of Watts. 34 people are killed, more than 1,000 others are injured, and hundreds of buildings are devastated before order is restored. It's a turning point for America's civil rights movement, as peaceful protests in the South give way to violent clashes in the nation's major cities. 1984. A joke by President Ronald Reagan during a voice test for a paid political radio address causes a Cold War flap.
All right, my fellow Americans, I'm pleased to tell you today that I've signed legislation that will outlaw Russia forever. We begin bombing in 5 minutes.
1992. The Mall of America, at the time the biggest indoor mall in the United States, and still one of the nation's largest, opens in Bloomington, Minnesota. 1921. Alex Haley, author of Roots, the African-American family saga that became a hit TV miniseries, is born in Ithaca, New York. And 1956. Abstract painter Jackson Pollock dies in an auto accident on New York's Long Island. He was 44. Today in history, August 11th. Camille Bohannon, The Associated Press.
Your wife is in a bar. You said she's unresponsive.
This is what he's going to tell you.
Trying to find the first place to put a body.
No, sir. The only thing they could do was kill him.
The jury and to find the defendant